Hello everyone. Hi friends. Today I'm here, Ashley Keating, with Marco from Clutch Team Sports, and I wanted to open up talking about something a little bit different. Yesterday was Mental Health Awareness Day, which is something extremely personal and special to me. And I studied psychology all throughout school, and I've also struggled with my mental health. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was younger, and later had my diagnosis changed to depressive OCD, which is like just a specific um, section of OCD that I have. I think some people maybe have uh, the wrong idea of OCD. It's not really just like making sure that your stove is off every time. It's kind of a form of control. A lot of people who dealt with trauma. I used to work at a veterans clinic, and a lot of veterans who struggle with PTSD struggle with OCD tendencies. Also, a lot of children who dealt with like abuse in their childhood. So OCD and specifically depressive OCD is something that's extremely important to me. I don't think it really matters, like I said, what your diagnosis is. Earlier in life, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but the treatment for both has kind of been the same for me. But I just wanted to let anyone watching know that they're not alone. I'm also kind of inspired. I saw Ryan G. Hensley post about the National Suicide link. I just wanted to put it up here. It's 988, so just like 911, but just a little bit different. Um, we'll get into football in a second, but like I said, yesterday was Mental Health Awareness Day, and coming from a family of veterans and then coming from my own background struggling, I just wanted to start off saying that if you are ever struggling or going through a hard spot, you are not alone. I've definitely had my downs, and I'm so incredibly happy that I am here and that I'm where I am. And so I really encourage anyone to reach out to a friend, reach out to a mentor, a colleague, a peer. And if you feel like you can't do that, or maybe that's not enough help for you, if you're ever in a crisis situation, please don't hesitate to call. These people are trained, and they're never going to make you feel judged or alone. And I think sometimes taking that beat can be really, really important. So I just wanted to, like I said, I was inspired by Ryan G. Hensley, and I didn't stream yesterday, and yesterday was Mental Health Awareness Month. So I just wanted to say there on my channel, there's never any shame about anything like that. And I just wanted to put that link out there. But
No,
hi
absolutely.
Marco.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go into that too.
Mhm.
As my shirt says, so it does say Warriors, but it says you are not alone. And it has a green ribbon. You're not alone. As Ashley is saying, even if you need to speak to someone and you don't want to speak to someone that you know, if you follow me on Twitter, you follow my YouTube channel, I'm always available. There's someone there. And I really appreciate Ashley taking her time out of her channel for the first minute to bring awareness to this and bring light that you're not alone. Everyone has their battles, and your battles. One day you feel like your battle is going great, and I'm speaking from experience. One day your battle feels like you've overcome it, and next thing you know, the next day you're back in a situation where you once were. So don't feel like you're alone. My direct messages are always open. But I really appreciate you for starting off the channel that way. That's very inspirational.
Thank you so much. And same here. My direct messages are always open, and there's no judgment. And I really like that nowadays. I feel like these things are talked about more. I think when I was a kid, I was definitely really embarrassed with my diagnosis, and even kind of getting older with OCD. I feel like I think we talk a lot more maybe about depression and stuff, but I think certain things are still really stigmatized. But they're all they all kind of stem from similar places, and they you definitely do get better, and sometimes you have downsides. And I know for me,
Mhm.
having friends that I can rely on and that I can be open with, like not having to keep these things a secret, is definitely why I'm here today. And hotlines like this are incredibly helpful. When I went to UCSB, I worked in the mental health center and then also in the veteran center. And I know personally, I have utilized lines like this. And also, I know lots of people who have needed them. There's no shame in it. it doesn't need to be a long conversation. You don't have to tell everyone your story. You also can if you want to. Um, but yeah, it's just nice to be able to have a second and take a moment, because sometimes that's all you need, um, is just to ground yourself for a second, distract yourself. And I think that for me, to kind of hard transition, I earlier was saying thank you on Twitter for how kind people have been since I've started my channel. I on Wednesday 3 weeks ago was the first video that I posted on Twitter, and this time Wednesday 2 weeks ago was the first post video that I posted on YouTube. Um, and it had me thinking about when I first joined the 49ers community, kind of coming out of COVID, or the online community, coming out of COVID. I was definitely in kind of a rough space mentally, and it was really nice to be able to talk about something kind of silly and fun with other people who were so inviting and smart. I want to shout him out, Jordan Elliott specifically. I
Great guy
remember
right
he
there.
was so helpful to me in the beginning, teaching any questions that I had if I felt dumb, teaching me. And the guys like Richmond Jared and so many, Jesse Naylor, so many other people made me feel really welcome, and kind of like I had a built-in friendship. So it's been really nice to be doing this, and to kind of reflect on how grateful I am for a little community like this. But while we're talking, kind of switching to football, I wanted to talk about this. It's a little bit drama-y, but I think I can tie it in historically and make it an interesting topic. But we're going to start with the drama side of it, which was at the end of the demoralizing game that the Dallas Cowboys had, 42-10, George Kittle pulled up his jersey and showed off a shirt that said "F you, Dallas." Um, some people had, some people were fans of this, and some people had some pretty strong criticisms. I really like that more football players have their own podcasts or going on other podcasts. I actually caught Kittle's comments on Pat McAfee, and he kind of explained why he did it, paying homage to Gary Plummer, who wore the same shirt against Dallas in NFC Championship game. Um, what was your take on George Kittle displaying the shirt? Did you think it was in poor taste? Did you think it was acceptable? What was your reaction?
So I'm not gonna say the cuss word I want to say, but I effing love it. Effing love
Yeah.
it. So the reason why I love it is so not even because of the Gary Plummer and paying homage to the guys who came before Kittle and them, but essentially the reason why I loved it is this has been a rivalry since the 80s. Like the fact that Micah Parsons eventually came on was like, oh, now he makes it personal. It's been personal. Like, what are you talking?
Yeah.
Like, your organization, and I know you're going to get to this later, but the Dallas Cowboys organization is not doing a good job with their young players and teaching them the history of their franchise.
hmm I completely agree. Um, my take on this was actually that I think that George Kittle doing that. I've heard George Kittle previously talk about when he was first drafted by the 49ers, and the Shanahans do this with all their rookies. They take them through the extensive 49er history, and George Kittle said a big part of that was learning about the Dallas Cowboys and the rivalry, and how important that is to the organization and to the kind of the story of the
Mhm.
49ers. And I'm someone who really loves that. I don't want these new players to not kind of know, okay, why are these fans so passionate? Why has this been passed down from generations for decades? So I kind of love that George Kittle, even though in all recent years, yeah, this isn't much of a rivalry. The 49ers have completely destroyed the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's nice that he still gets up for this game and still thinks it's special, and that the team still understands the rich history. I know guys like Steve Young have came on, and he says every time they go against Dallas that he feels something special. Um, just watching the two, I mean, even on TV, watching the Dallas Cowboys colors go against the 49ers, there's a reason that people get so up for that game. There's a reason. I think it was 26 million people tuned in. It was record-breaking numbers. Whether or not the Dallas Cowboys are, real competition or a fair opponent. I know going into it we thought they were, but whether or not they actually are, I think it's still extremely special to fans, and I really like that it's special to George Kittle, and I hope that it's special to a lot of the 49er players. I thought it was kind of funny, Micah Parsons' comments having Debo say, it's been personal for us. I don't know, maybe it should have been more personal for you guys. Like you're right, we did get up for it. But yeah, so how did you feel about Debo Samuel's response to that? How did you feel about Micah Parsons' response? I feel like people are criticizing George Kittle. If I was Micah Parsons, if I was a teammate of Micah Parsons, I'd be like, hey, dude, I know you might be good, but we have to face them again, and you're cashing checks that we can't do. I know he has a podcast, but he could have said something like, hey, when you win by 32 points, you get to do what you want. We'll face them next time. Something like that. He didn't need to go on and kind of talk trash back. It just seemed to me very silly. And if I was a Dallas Cowboys fan, I feel like I'd be looking at Micah Parsons sideways. But yeah, as a 49er fan, I do not feel that way about Kittle, but I know some people do. So I thought it would be interesting to bring that side up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna give you a little story real quick. So I
Yeah.
have a cousin. He's in high school, right? He's a freshman in high school, so he doesn't really understand the '80s, the '90s history, but he does at the same time. But throughout the week, he was like, "Hey, where are you watching the game? I want to watch the game with you. Hey, where are you watching the game?" And I'm like, I kept asking him, I was like, "This is the first time he's ever texted me or like, hey, where are we watching the game at? Normally, my family gets together." And I'm like, "You never text me." I'm like, "Hey, why do you want to watch this game with me?" He was like, "Because I can't stand the Cowboys. This is a big game for us." So for me, I'm like, the fact that like a kid who's a freshman in high school understands the rivalry and a player on the Dallas Cowboys that's embarrassing, first of all. The way Micah Parsons approached it at the end was like, "Oh, Kittle, you made it personal. Now watch, when we see." First of all, I thought that was idiotic because you just got your ass handed to you, 42-10, right? You can't get your ass whooped and then come back and be like, "Hey, watch me fight again." Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you're gonna continue to get your ass whooped. So for me, I thought Michael Parsons' comments were very interesting because there are a lot of players on that roster who it was personal for. I know
Right.
for sure there's a couple of players on that roster who thought it was personal. Dak Prescott took it personal. If you go to the interview from Dak Prescott throughout the week, they asked him, "How do you feel about the 49ers bouncing you guys in the last two playoffs?" He looks over to the reporter who asked him that question and was like, "Thanks for pissing me off. You gave me the motivation." Like pretty much he got mad about that question. If
Yeah.
you get mad over that kind of question, you know it's personal. So for me, the fact that we have Micah Parsons going on his podcast saying, "Oh, watch next time we see you." I thought that was ridiculous for Michael Parsons to come say you can't say that when you were irrelevant during the game. Just like Coach Uncle Sherm said, you can't make these comments, but then you were literally nowhere on the field. Like you can't do that.
Right.
It's like me saying something outrageous knowing it ain't true. Like you can't do that. And then I love how Debo followed up on I believe it was what's her name?
Hey, Adams. Kay
Yeah, Kay
Adams.
Adams. So he's on her show. She asked him about it, and he sure enough said, "I guarantee you, I don't want to see us again because it's going to be worse. It's personal
Yeah.
for us." And I
Yeah.
think the 49ers, I think in the sense of this roster has made every game personal, in my opinion. I think
Hmm.
from based off of what happened last year and losing an NFC championship the way they did, I think this year has been personal for them on many levels, not just necessarily the rivalry. The rivalry was extra cream on top of the whatever you want to call it, but it was just extra motivation for them. So I feel like everything's been personal since week one. And the fact that the Dallas Cowboys understand what kind of rivalry that is, we bounced you 2 years in a row in the playoffs. Get it together. Like you should know what it
Yeah.
is. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing comments from Michael Parsons, in my opinion.
I completely agree. I definitely thought he could have handled that so much differently. And I saw some commentary like he has a podcast, he has to address it, and it's like, okay, there's much better ways to address it than to kind of
Mhm.
make statements that you clearly haven't been able to follow up on. Maybe start letting your let your play talk. Don't get taken out of the game. Don't have to. I mean, you weren't even lined up against Trent Williams. I know that they lined him up against him, but that was because he couldn't go against Kittle and Juice, who kept chipping him. Um, Talking about it personally, I found it interesting. I also heard Fred Warner talking on his podcast. Everyone has a podcast nowadays. Um, and he said not only did his initiation to the rival initiate being drafted to the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, the regime making a big emphasis to kind of show previous Dallas Cowboy games and instill in the players that this is a rivalry and that it is an important game. But not only that, but he was a Dallas Cowboys fan growing up. And then when he wasn't drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, he said he made it his mission that every time he was going to play them, they were going to have to see him and he was going to bring his A game. We'll get to him later in the show. He definitely, every team is seeing him and no team wants
Mm-hmm.
to see him. But when we're talking about George Kittle, who talked about how important the rivalry was, how and he also touched on. You said every game has been important. I was so interested by his comments. I don't normally watch the Pat McAfee show, but I'm so glad that I saw these clips. He talked about that loss in the NFC Championship game last year, and he kind of made a comment where he was like, I think if they would have lost their quarterback, the same thing would have happened. Now, I don't want to super get into that because I know that's controversial because you have to protect your quarterback. And if you do that, maybe he stays healthy, all that. But he did say that for this entire team, they have taken uh, coming into the season, they were extremely aware that they wanted to start off strong, and he said that they kind of see this as like bam, 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 let's get that number one seed, and that the real game start in the playoffs. They have heard, according to George Kittle, at least he said, we've heard the talk, we've heard the noise, that we keep making it to the hump and then not taking it to that next level. And you could tell when he was talking about it how passionate he was about taking that next step and how determined he seemed, and
Mm-hmm.
how when he talked about the whole team, you can tell their goal is Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl, and that there's no confusion or distraction going into the season. But with all the talk coming off the Dallas Cowboys game from multiple different 49er players, Fred Warner not being drafted, Kittle, Debo, all that, do you think maybe there will be some sort of emotional letdown coming off this game? Also, just Sunday night football. Now we're gonna go, or the 49ers are gonna go against the Brown, I think 10 a.m. So it's just a little bit of a do you think there'll be any emotional letdown going into this Browns game coming off such a heightened um, performance?
So I have to go back and now I have to watch those Kittle clips because I haven't. Today was a busy day at work, so I didn't get to watch any clips.
Yeah.
So I have to go back and watch that because that's very interesting to hear. But I don't think there will be emotional letdown against the Browns, and the reason is there's a good chance that Deshaun Watson doesn't play, and if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, they don't have a quarterback who really could play. PJ Walker, not scared of him.
PTR.
The
I'm just kidding.
DTR, I mean, I like DTR as a rookie, but 3 interceptions last week. They likely don't start him. He looked pretty bad. I turned on that game for a few minutes, and it was very disappointing to watch. But the reason I think the emotional letdown, even if Deshaun Watson does play, there's no emotional letdown. And the reason I think this letdown won't happen is because of Fred Warner. Right now, Fred Warner has this team dialed in, and it's one of those ones where you look for a leader who is just plays with that passion, but also he expects that kind of passion from you. He expects that level of play from you, and I think that's the biggest thing I noticed this year from in the past. Fred Warner's always been a guy who plays with that kind of emotion, that passion, and that energy. But this year, he's holding everyone accountable. I saw him during the game go up to someone and he's pounding his hands in his face, like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, you cannot miss that." So I think it's the way that they're holding everyone accountable on this team. The way Debo came into camp with a purpose and shape.
Mhm.
Talking to Kyle Shanahan about stuff like that. I don't think we'll see any letdowns. And if the only way we lose a game because of a letdown is more so the ball bounced the wrong way and someone had a bad day. That's the only way I could see us actually coming out and losing a game because of emotional letdown. But I don't think the Browns are a team unless the snow happens. I mean, unless it becomes a very snowy game, anything could happen. But I don't think
Yeah.
um, we'll lose this game to the Browns. But the Browns are actually a better team than the Dallas Cowboys. Defensively, they're a much better defense than the Cowboys.
I'm I am interested in the weather because Kyle Shanahan has struggled in rain games, which is kind of hilarious because I feel like the way that most teams at rain games is the run game, and that's such a strength. That's always been such a strength under this regime. So it is kind of interesting. I think if the 49ers run game, if they did have to just run Christian McCaffrey and even Jordan Mason now, um, I do think offensively going against even Deshaun Watson, if he is playing, hasn't been nearly the player that he was at his height. So I would still say that the 49ers would have the advantage by a lot. I just maybe wouldn't be like a 30-point game if you're just running it every single play if it is pouring down rain. But I'm interested in that. You talked about you do think that this Browns defense is maybe more. People were saying last week that the Dallas Cowboys were going to be a real test. Maybe the Browns as a whole won't be a real test because of their offensive struggles and um, quarterback question marks right now. But do you think that the 49ers offense, with all their success, I think it was 9 straight games that they've scored 30 or more points. I mean, the Purdy IU connection has been so special. Christian McCaffrey on another level, even when the Dallas Cowboys were able to kind of uh, stall Christian McCaffrey. Then we have Jordan Mason, who's been unbelievable. People put all their efforts into stopping Debo, then Kittle goes off. The 49ers offense has seemed to have no weaknesses. Do you think going into this game that maybe there will be um, not like that the Browns could win, but can you see that the 49ers looking maybe less smooth? Because I feel like they just seem so dominant. Do you think that that could be a possibility?
No, yeah, I think there's always a possibility for anything like that to happen, right? So if you look at the Cleveland Browns, I think their defensive line has been phenomenal against the run. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're the best run defense, allowing teams around 60 yards a game, maybe a little bit less. So their success rate against the run is very high. Now, what does that force you to do if you're unable to run the ball with Christian McCaffrey or Jordan Mason? You have to become a drop back team. Now, you don't want to get into a throwing game against this defense. They have very good corners and a very good defensive line. They got Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith. Their corners are a lot better than any team we've played. They got Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. But then their third corner is Martin Emerson, a player I wanted the Niners to draft last year. He's been phenomenal his first 2 years in the season. This season, he's been phenomenal in coverage. So they match up well with the 49ers. Now, their safeties, you got Juan Thornhill, and you also got Grant Delpit, players that I don't necessarily think they could cover Kittle. So that's the advantage. Their linebackers and their safeties are a little bit weaker. But that defense is a very, very solid defense. When you have a defensive line, you just naming off their player like Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson. They got your Jordan Elliott, not the 49ers Jordan Elliott, but they got the Browns version of Jordan Elliott. And then Zadarius Smith. So and then when the rotation, it's a solid rotation as well. You got Maurice Hurst, who used to be a 49er. They got Shelby Harris, a good veteran. So the rotation is there for their defensive line. It's just a matter of do they disguise looks that Kyle isn't comfortable with. And then the thing is, I think right now it's kind of hard to put the 49ers offense in a bind. And the reason is exactly if we look at what Dallas did, right? Their number one goal, take away CMC. That was their number one goal. Number two goal, take away Brandon Ayuk. Now, what does that do? If your eyes are on CMC and BA, Kittle's running wide ass open. Like, and it's not even fair with how many weapons the 49ers have to, okay, you want to take away that? Well, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna do this all game and you're not gonna beat me. So I think it's gonna be fun to watch the 49ers go up against a defense that can go man to man. I think Dallas Cowboys weren't a team that could go man to man. Their safeties didn't match up. So you could actually go man to man on the outside with Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel, and you could kind of bracket coverage George Kittle. So you could do that because you have the corners to do it and you have the safeties to bracket Debo. So in the run game, it all comes down to I think our defensive line versus their defensive line versus our offensive line at the end of the day.
Which is, in my opinion, like if a team is going to slow down the 49ers offense, it would be in the trenches. And I feel like going into the Dallas game, I thought that maybe that would be a bigger challenge for the 49ers offense that it ended up being. I did think that maybe Dallas would cause some chaos in there, and Kyle Shanahan was able to scheme really well against that. I am interested in seeing the Browns go. I mean, with so many amazing D linemen, I know that I thought that the wrinkle, what they did to like kind of neutralize Parsons, is when they put him on Colton McKivitz, they moved both Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle over to that side, which is why they ended up moving Parsons to Trent Williams, because I feel like they were like, okay, it's either 3 against 1 or one really good guy against one really good guy, which I think Dallas made the wrong decision in hindsight. But Dallas doesn't have as many, in my opinion, the talent discrepancy is a little bit different. The Browns defense they have the best defense in the league right now. Formerly, the Cowboys were up there, but then they did so poorly against the 49ers that the 49ers knocked them down. It'll be kind of interesting to see. Right now the Browns are on top. Will the 49ers end up knocking them down as well? And I think the 49ers defense kind of heard some of the question marks going in to the previous game, and we're talking about how players are taking every game personal. I think this defense wants to show that they are the number one defense in the league, that they are, kind of out for blood. They want to hit you as soon as you get the ball. Like there's no way to go against this defense. They stop the run almost immediately. I saw someone saying, because earlier a big topic for people was talking about sacks, and I saw someone saying that hiccup that Wilkes has been doing is, instead of having like Nick Bosa run straight for the quarterback, they kind of hesitate for a second to make sure it's not a run, or if it is a mobile quarterback, to be able to make sure that they're not like breaking as many for as many yards, because mobile quarterbacks has been something that the 49ers defense has struggled with. And if you look at going against Josh Dobbs in Arizona, and Dak isn't as mobile now, but mobile quarterbacks so far, not that we faced a super mobile one, but we faced quarterbacks that can move, or the 49ers have faced quarterbacks that can move, and they have not, that has not been a challenge for them at all. They've done a really good job at stopping them. I don't know about PJ Walker. I know that a wrinkle that Deshaun Watson used to have was his mobility. Now he's played a lot more poorly recently, and he also didn't practice today, so we don't know if he's going to do it. But how do you think this 49ers defense will face against the Browns offense, if it is, maybe if you want to talk about both, if it's Deshaun Watson and if it's not?
Yeah, of course. So I don't think that Nick Bosa is being asked to do that. The
Okay.
reason is so what happens when you have a mobile quarterback is it freezes you as a defensive lineman. So, for example, when you have a mobile quarterback that can get outside, you kind of have to hesitate and you hold one just a little bit tad where it looks like you're hesitating. And essentially, what that's doing for a quarterback is as soon as you can hold the defensive lineman, now you're able, and that's why Josh Dobbs got us on two big plays downfield. It held the defense just enough where the defensive line was kind of, oh, dang, is it a run? Is it, so you kind of, it's not necessarily asking the defensive lineman to do that. Now, if Wilkes is doing that, you would normally see more of a design pocket, the way they would the rush was instead of going in, they're kind of containing. So it's more of a contain the pocket and don't let them get out, and kind of as you're going, so you'd go around and you're kind of squeezing the pocket down to make it uncomfortable because you got the inside presence of your two defensive tackles pushing forward, so it kind of suffocates the quarterback. So I don't really think Steve Wilkes is asking them to do that. In terms of asking Nick Bosa to hesitate, asking Nick Bosa to ever hesitate is the worst thing you could possibly do, because that's your best player on the defensive line. So I have to go back and look. I'm curious to see who said that, but I'll go back and look. But I don't think Steve Wilkes is asking them to do that. Now, if it's Deshaun Watson hasn't been wanting to run lately. Now he can, um, and he prefers to. He's more of a. I wouldn't say he's a running quarterback, but he's more of a scrambler. And that's where we've gotten beat in the past. Where we get out of rush lane integrity, and so for example, the defensive lineman is they're supposed to go and rush lanes. Instead of going in your rush lane, you get washed out a little bit to the left or to the right. Now you create an open hole where the quarterback can take off. I don't really think Deshaun Watson is that quarterback to beat us that way. He wants to throw the ball first. But if you give him a lane, he's going to pick up the 10 to 15 yards. He will take it. Now, PJ Walker is the opposite. He wants to run. He's not that great of a quarterback in terms of pocket quarterback. They're going to, if with PJ Walker, they're going to get him on the move. They're going to move the pocket, especially after last week, seeing what they did with DTR. They're going to move the pocket, allow him to get outside the pocket, and allow him to use his legs. When he came over from the XFL, in the XFL, he was a great running quarterback. When you went to I believe the Carolina Panthers, a lot of his stuff was running the ball, throwing it around. He has the capability of throwing deep. In my
What was
opinion,
that one game he did? This is like a tangent, but was it against the Colts where he just like had like one phenomenal game? Do you know what I'm talking about? It was
Is
last
it
year.
the is it the
Um,
one where DJ Moore he threw a
yeah,
dime to
yeah, yeah,
DJ
yeah,
Moore and DJ Moore threw
yeah,
his helmet off? It might have been that game. I believe it was the Colts or the I want to say the Falcons come to mind on that game. I don't know why,
yeah.
but I believe it was the Falcons because it was the division game. DJ Moore
I
throws his
remember
helmet
there was
off.
just like a week where everyone was like, maybe they found something, and then like he came out the next week and it was like, no, that was just one really good game, but
Yeah,
the
so he's
hype was cool
capable.
for yeah, yeah, that's true.
He's
So
capable of
he
doing stuff, but it all just depends on if he started getting loose running the ball, then it could put us in a
yeah.
bind. And once you get put in a bind, you're kind of hesitating. But I don't think that their offense will give us problems, even with Deshaun Watson. The reason is they don't got the running game they have with Nick Chubb. So
Yeah.
that injury was huge to that offense. So I think their offense isn't nothing to worry about.
I agree. And I just don't, this 49ers team isn't at a place where it's letting other quarterbacks get comfortable. I think
Hmm.
you talking about them collapsing the pocket, whether or not they're getting sacks or just pressures. You saw back making just the most erratic throws. And it's either that you're making the quickest throw possible to not get hit, or you're chucking something up and just saying a prayer, and that's not gonna get you enough points to keep up with this offense right now. But we'll kind of transition to, I was going to do offense first, but since we're kind of focused on the 49ers defense right now, and I was talking about um, the pocket collapsing and all that, a different video that I saw, because I don't know, I guess I was just watching a bunch of videos this week. Normally I don't really do that, but was Johnny Football Academy. He's a
Okay.
49ers content creator. I wanted to shout him out because I've definitely learned a lot from his videos. He does film breakdowns. They're pretty intensive or whatever, but they're not. I know that Jace O'Sullivan. What is JC O'Sullivan? That's how you
Yeah,
say it,
Jake,
right?
JT.
Yeah, yeah, JT. There you go. I know he usually focuses on the quarterbacks, and people love to talk about his breakdowns of Brock Purdy, which are fantastic. I think that Johnny Football, he has made some really good ones. He spotlighted Fred Warner. He did about a 20-minute video earlier today. I think he said Fred Warner leads the leading defense in the NFL or something. I thought it was really interesting. He broke down some plays about just kind of explaining how dominant Fred Warner is in so many aspects, whether or not it's in coverage or how he's able to really dissect what the offense is going to do before the play and everything. So I thought I would ask you, who do you think? I know it's only been 5 weeks, but so far, who do you think the standout player on the 49ers defense has been?
So I could cheat and go Fred Warner, my favorite
Mhm.
player. He's been my favorite player since we drafted him. I'm a big Fred Warner fan, especially because I realized like I learned recently, maybe 2 years ago, that he has Hispanic hair. Like
Mhm.
he's Hispanic. Like to me, like I was like,
Yeah.
dang, that's my boy. So like I'm a super big Fred Warner fan. So I could easily go him. I think he's in lead for defensive player of the year. Just what he's been doing lately. Um, just the mind. I think it's more so. So he's always had the athletic ability to do everything. I think his mind now, like he's just playing mind games with the offenses, and it's crazy to see. Um, but since Fred Warner's always getting highlighted and everyone's always giving Fred his love, I'm gonna go to someone else. I'm gonna go two players. I'm gonna give you two
I
players.
want
So
to.
I'm gonna go.
I feel like I know one of them. Go ahead.
So one of them is gonna be Denominal Lenore. I feel like Denominal Lenore has been playing
Mhm.
fantastic football. I thought he had his best game by far against CeeDee Lamb. I've been saying CeeDee Lamb isn't a receiver; he's a glorified slot. All these Dallas fans like to say, "Oh, CD is better than Brandon Ayuk." Blah, blah.
No.
Nah, he's a glorified slot receiver, and he got locked up by Denomina Lenore. Lenore's been phenomenal in coverage. Um, that's a player that the 49ers should probably think about keeping. I know financially everything's getting tight, but that's a guy I'd keep around. What he's been doing lately is phenomenal. Another guy, Javon Hargrave. Um, I so I'm the kind of person where when I critique something and I'm proven wrong, I give you your props. So Javon Hargrave, when he was in Philly, he wasn't a good run defender. He was actually kind of poor of a run defender, and he's been phenomenal as a run defender. It's been fantastic to see. I'm excited to see him. He's collapsing pockets. He's getting pressures. He's doing the Javon Hargrave thing, but his run defense has been so good that it's allowed the 49ers to play him every down. Hargrave has been a key to this defense, and the reason is when you have great defensive tackle play, your linebacking play goes up, and the reason is if you keep your linebackers clean, those are the guys that make the plays. Now, the guys that don't get the credit are the defense, are the dudes doing the nasty work. So
Yeah.
that's why I give props to Javon Hargrave. I would throw in Kinlaw, but I'm only going to give 2 today. So Kinlaw got to keep working, and to next week, if when me and Ashley do another show, if you do
There we
good
go.
again, I might shout you out.
Yeah, I saw his did you see it? It's maybe not family appropriate, but did you see his Instagram story?
He's
Yeah.
a
I
menace. He's really a menace.
You gotta love the mindset of all of these defensive players. When you were just talking about Diamondre Lenore, I remember going into this offseason thinking he would probably really break out this year just because the confident, I think to be a corner, I think confidence is so important. And I remember last year, like anytime he would have any sort of mess up, he'd be like liking tweets, and then he would circle back and he would improve the next week. He would like weaknesses that people pointed out. I feel like he made it his mission to show improvement the next game, and then he would circle back and be like, "Look what I did." Um, and I just like guys who carry themselves with that swagger. When we're talking about Fred Warner, um, and his mindset, just like the mental grit. I know he told a story about during the national anthem, he'll stand across and he'll look for the other team's quarterback, and while it's going, he'll try to stare them down and he won't blink. And if the quarterback doesn't look at him, he said, one, I know that means um, it means that like they're not going to win because their quarterback isn't strong enough to look at me. And two, he's like, I'll be like, okay, fine, I won't look at you. I'll find someone else. And he's like, I'll just stare them down the whole time. Um, I just love the mindset that these defensive players have. I think that's so important, especially when we're talking about players like corners like Diamond Lenore. I think
Hmm.
when they were both drafted, people, including myself, assumed Ambry Thomas, especially coming off their rookie year when Ambry Thomas played, that he was going to come in and take that spot. And Demo really took it over. And I think when we look at maybe why that happened, the determination and self belief that Diamond Lenore really took him to a new level, where Ambry Thomas, it just seemed like maybe his dedication, and I don't, want to talk about him as a personal, as a, person, but just as a player, maybe his dedication wasn't there as much because off the bat, I mean, he was high, he had more maybe physical ability,
And
more
you're
traits.
talking Ambry, or
Ambry, Ambry
so I
Thomas.
would I would I would allude it to, and I know a lot of people don't know, but he had a I don't know what the illness was, but where he lost a lot of weight. And he had lost like 25, 30 pounds at one point coming out of college. So I think that's what put him back, in terms of, I don't know if I wouldn't say it was necessarily um uh not wanting to do it, but he had to go through a lot, and he had a battle with a lot of medical stuff he had to deal with. So I would more so put it in that being the sole reason why he came into his rookie year, trying to add that weight back on, trying to add a lot, and then this is year 3 for him, right?
Yeah.
So year
Yeah.
2, you saw him play a little bit, didn't really play. So I think that could be what it was, on the confidence,
Yeah.
because of all the situation he was going through. I think that's
Yeah.
what had caused the confidence to be down a little bit.
Okay, that's super interesting. So I was kind of referencing like going into their sophomore year, because Ambry Thomas definitely got the
Mhm.
nod above Demo that first year. And then I know Ambry Thomas went on like a, I don't know if you would call it this because I think his religion, I think he's Muslim. So I want to be careful to not use the wrong language, but I know he went on like a tour for religious purposes over the summer, and he spent a lot of
Mhm.
time doing that. And he talked a lot about that on his Instagram and that being really important to him, which is great. I totally obviously support that. But during that time, I think Demo was extremely committed to improving upon his weaknesses. And then when they came back that sophomore year, you could really see the step that Diamondor Lenore took. Um, but yeah, I was more just trying to talk about, I think the defense as a whole. I really love how
Mhm.
physical and kind of nasty and gritty they are. When we're
Absolutely.
talking about standout players, the guy who I actually thought you were going to say, and it's kind of funny because I feel like we've talked about like six people now, and I said talk about one, but it just shows how amazing, incredible his defense is. I thought you were going to talk about Dre Greenlaw, who is just as a fan, is just a personal favorite of mine. Um, just when you watch him on the field, you're like,
Mhm.
this is football. This is real football. I feel like it takes me back. I wasn't obviously around when it was the most physical, but it definitely I like that he walks that line. I find it hilarious that now that he's gotten a couple penalties, that now after doing something that definitely is borderline, he'll like immediately put up his hands and be like, don't don't flag on me. Don't. Um, I love I think that his mindset is kind of like, I'm gonna hit you so hard that you don't want to come near me again. And I think him and Fred Warner work perfectly off of each other. But yeah, this defense as a whole just has such an excellent mindset. Um, definitely seems run by Fred Warner though, who I agree with. Richard Sherman should be in that defensive player of the year conversation. It's obviously only week 5, and he is a linebacker, but I think he could have been in that conversation last year, but because he's on a team with Nick Bosa, who's also so dominant, I think he can kind of be overshadowed, which is hilarious because he's definitely talked about extremely highly, but you're like, no, he's even better than that somehow. So yeah,
I want to caption on or talk about Dre Greenlaw a little bit because
yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
how he plays too because he plays how I played. I was always the kind of guy like I don't care. Like you have that underdog mentality, and you're gonna push the line until you get flagged. And once you get flagged, you're like, all right, now I know how far I can go. So like
Yeah.
I was that guy. Like if the ref ain't calling stuff, like I was doing stuff that technically is considered illegal in terms of like or you normally should get flagged for. But if the ref ain't calling it, and I've noticed Drake Greenlaw does the same thing. If the ref ain't calling it that game, it ain't illegal because it's not
Mhm.
being called. So that's why Drake Greenlaw does this extra, and people were like, "Oh, he's penalty prone." No, it's not that. It's you're gonna go so hard until you realize, okay, this is how the refs call in today's game.
Yeah.
Last week they were letting him hit. What do we see?
Yeah.
We've seen him hit. So it all every ref is different in terms of how they call a game. So you have to kind of find that fine line, and I think that's what it is with Dre. He's one of those guys who he's gonna find that fine line. It's usually gonna be within the first couple of drives, and usually you see a flag come out because it's soft NFL nowadays.
I like that. That's a you played football, so your analogy is that. Mine is like being kind of a troublemaker in school. Like I always
Yeah,
like
you're
to
gonna.
talk with
That's what.
my friends and everything. I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, if it's a new year and I have a new teacher, I'm like, okay, can I pass my little note to my friend? Can I laugh
Mhm.
in the back and can we tell our little jokes, or are you gonna stop and tell me to not? And if you're not, then I'm gonna be doing this until you say something.
Absolutely. It's like exactly what it is. It's like you're gonna try to find what you can get away with, and then once you get
Yeah.
caught, it's like, all right, I got
You're
caught.
like, oh,
Can't do that
all right.
again. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah, yeah.
that's what it is. It's not
Yes, you
necessarily it's not him being because I've seen people on even 49er fans say he's not a dirty player. It's finding the fine
No.
line. It's a physical
I don't
game.
think he's ever done anything like intentional to like
Yeah.
hurt or like target a player. He just wants you to feel him. He's like
Yeah.
wants to be tough and physical, which I think both Robert Sala, D'Amico, and now Wilkes, I think they kind of tried to carry that along throughout their defenses. Like, hey, that's something the 49ers hang their hat on.
Mhm.
Not just defensively, but offensively, they hang their hat on that too. This team is a tough, rough and tough physical team. Probably all comes back to Kyle Shanahan, who, even though he's kind of like one of these new age boys. I forget what JT O'Sullivan calls them, but there's their name for the um, Rams coach, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, all those young guys. But Kyle Shanahan has that old school mentality, and he wants his players, even in practice. I mean, that's why isn't that why Brandon Ayuk originally got in the doghouse? Is like, we want you to go
Mhm.
110%. Don't show any flinching. They want their receivers to be blockers, all that. So while we're talking about the whole team being super physical, let's transition to the offense, and we're talking about standout players. So do you have a standout player for the first 5 games so far on the offense? Who do you think has maybe been the most impactful player for this 49ers offense?
I'm gonna go. It's none of the skill players, and
Okay.
reason why
Good.
is the skill players. Everyone gives them credit. But Aaron Banks has been playing phenomenal football. Like it's
Yeah.
been. So it was funny. So the day that the I was live when the 49ers drafted Aaron Banks. Me and David Lichty were, and David was like, I don't like. He didn't necessarily say I didn't like the pick, but he was like, I don't care for it. There's better players. But he was like, I understand the pick. I loved it at the time.
Okay.
At the time, it was to protect Trey. You're protecting your investment. People didn't see him play year one, and he was called a bust, second round bust. Right, kid comes in, the right mindset. Um, been phenomenal this year in the run game, pass game. Like he's been one of the best guards in the NFL, and that's probably an understatement. He's probably in the top 5, top 10 category in terms of guards. But it's the way he's finishing plays for me, the way he's finishing pancakes, the way he's during the Dallas game, open hand slap. And like to me, that's I'm the kind of like I said, I'm the kind of person I'm finding that fine line. Boom, slap the shit out of a guy. And he looked at him like, "What's up? Like you're not gonna do it. We're here to punk you." That's the mentality that Trent has, Evan Banks has. Burford is starting to get that kind of mentality. I've noticed, and that mentality rubs off on people. It's different. It's an energy that you feel, and it's rubbing off on the rest of the offensive line. I see Burford playing with that kind of energy lately, finishing blocks, getting in people's faces. Um, I think Banks has been for me the standout player that no one's really talked about necessarily, but he deserves his praise. You can't do anything without an offensive line. You can't do anything without players on the O line, and I think he deserves a lot of the credit for what everyone's doing. Now, I could go down the line and list every single position player because that's how good the offense has
Yeah.
been. But I
Yeah.
think Aaron Banks has been a top 5 offensive guard this year.
I really like that pick. The offensive line definitely doesn't get talked about enough or the credit that it deserves. You and then my dad, who has also been just texting me like at the end of games, being like, "This offensive line is like doing so much better than we predicted coming into the game." So we have him too. I'm gonna be super basic, and I'm gonna say that I think Christian McCaffrey has been the standout player. I think there's been a lot of debates about Christian McCaffrey versus Purdy and everything. And I think, like you said, so many people can be, so many different of the positions could be talked about in this. But I think Christian McCaffrey, we saw even in the Dallas game when he was held to only, I think it was 2.8 yards a carry, like overall averaging that. He still got so much attention, and other defensive coordinators, like their whole game plan is, I think, I don't know if it was Dallas or if it was the Arizona game, but I think this is how every single defensive coordinator that the 49ers are facing feel. Their game plan is stop Christian McCaffrey, limit
Mhm.
him, and the resources that takes just helps open up the offense even more, which obviously Kyle Shanahan is scheming guys wide open. But I think knowing that Christian McCaffrey is going to take so much attention does an excellent job at that. I think there was a couple Jordan Mason passes that he was able to get because so many people have their eye on Christian McCaffrey, and because he can play, like it's almost like he's just as good of like a short yardage wide receiver as he is a running back, and he definitely just feels like another level. I know, like I said, eventually he was held to less yards, but in the beginning of that Dallas game, I was so shocked. He'd had like 4 guys on him and still end up getting 2 more yards. Like he seems even better than he did last year. And when the 49ers got him last year, he was obviously incredible. I think keeping him healthy is going to be maybe one of the most important things for the 49ers when it comes to playoff time and if they do make it to the Super Bowl. I think that will be one of the best or one of the deciding factors on how far they can go. Obviously, hopefully Kyle Shanahan doesn't feel that way and thinks that he can do that even without him, but I know right now he definitely feels really lucky to have him. So there was that. I had a different thought, but my brain went blank, so I won't talk about that anymore. I'm gonna finish this up because I know that you have
You're good.
a
You're good.
heart
Don't worry
out.
about it. You're good.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about I made a tweet about this that people found interesting. So and it's been something that I've pondered on pretty much every show that I've done. I just haven't found the perfect way to articulate it yet, but I had noticed like a difference in team unity and passion and spirit this year. And a lot of people have been ranking, trying to rank Purdy. It's only week 5, but okay, how does he size up against all these different quarterbacks? Where would you rank him? Would you be happy if the 49ers traded Dak for Purdy? Okay, what about if the money was the same? There's all these questions. And my thought was, instead of just looking at Purdy as an individual, let's look at him on the 49ers and let's look at him let's look at him in marriage with Kyle Shanahan. And because the two seem to have an incredible connection that maybe Kyle Shanahan either hasn't had at all before, or if he did have something similar with Matt Ryan, although Purdy is currently putting up even better numbers than Matt Ryan, which is incredible. But do you think that there's a better coach QB connection right now? Obviously, only week 5, but this year in the NFL. And have you noticed a change in Kyle Shanahan? And is that exciting to you as a 49 fan?
So I do think there is a better QB coach connection.
Okay.
When you have
Is it going to
Mahomes
be?
and Reed, like
Yeah.
it's hard to say they're not, right. Like they have Super Bowls together. Their offense is still scoring points. They're winning games.
But this year.
But even this year, they're 4-1. I mean, I can't. For me, it's one of those ones where if us as the 49er fans are going to be like, but he wins, right? I mean, they're winning. They're 4-1.
Yeah.
He's winning games. Whether he's getting helped by the NFL or not, like, hey, they're winning. But I think the biggest thing with the Kyle Shanahan and Purdy connection has been the way, not necessarily Kyle was calling plays, um, because this is what he's been calling for the past few years when he had Jimmy. Um, and I think there's questions. I know I've seen the questions. What happens if we were to trade Brock for Dak? In my opinion, I think Dak's a good quarterback. I think he's in a shitty ass offense. Shitty schemes don't win you games. And I think Brock Purdy. And this isn't a knock on Brock. I don't want people to, oh, you're
Yeah.
bashing Brock. That's not. Brock's playing phenomenal football. What he's doing is doing what Kyle knows he could do. Kyle's always been a guy who, I'm going to give you the answers to the test. And Kurt, I can't think of his last name, but he played for no, not Warner. It's Kurt Burr. I'll tell you exactly right now. Ben Kurt. He played for the 49ers, played for the
Oh, yeah,
Packers.
yeah, yeah.
He's mentioned it in the past. Kyle, when he was with the Niners, Kyle would ask them for their opinions. Kyle would be like, "What do you think?" Kyle would install plays from other offenses and adjust it to his scheme. He would. So for me, it's honestly just taking what Brock does really damn well and saying, "Brock, what do you like? Okay, now let's do this." He didn't really. I don't know if he did that for Jimmy because Jimmy likes the short, quick game. Kyle wanted
Mhm.
him to run his offense, but also Kyle was kind of forced. Jimmy was forced onto Kyle. It
Mhm.
wasn't. It wasn't someone he wanted. It wasn't someone that like we've heard. John Lynch say Kyle was going through a little depression when we traded for Jimmy. Like, so what does that tell you about how a coach felt about a quarterback that they just traded for? Now Kyle gets credit for what Purdy's doing, but the credit should be given to Brian Greasy. He's the one who wanted to
Yeah.
draft him. Like he was the one who said, "I've liked this kid from when I was in the booth at Fox. This kid is really good. They bring him on, and that's when Kyle realized, you know what, this quarterback is damn good, and that's what led it all. I think the connection between Kyle and Purdy, it's special. It's Kyle was able to call his plays and feel confident, and I don't necessarily think because I've seen some people like, oh, this is the most confident I've ever seen Kyle. I think Kyle's always been confident. I think the biggest difference is um, the execution of what's going on, the correct reads, throwing with anticipation. We haven't had a quarterback that has done that, but I feel like Kyle's always produced a high level offense. So it's phenomenal to see. I'm excited. I know a lot of people like to put Brock in the top 5, top 10 category. I'm not doing it yet.
Yeah.
I'm not. I think Brock is up there in top 12, 15, and that's not a knock on Brock. The reason I'm saying that is each week climb. Each week
Yeah.
it's a new week. It's
Give
not
him the
necessarily
opportunity to get better.
yeah, because so now a lot of people like to quote tweet and come back to old takes or whatever. I didn't think Brock was the answer. And I admit it. I didn't think Brock was the answer. Is he proving me wrong? Hell yeah, he is, and I'm proud of it. So the thing is with Brock, it's can you do this for an entire season? Right? We
Mhm.
haven't seen it. Same thing with any quarterback that I do when I talk football. I'm not gonna just label you like Patrick Mahomes' first year threw 55 touchdowns, right? The first year he fully started, won MVP or whatever. I was still like, damn, can he do it again? It's not hard. We've seen players come in 1 year. Joe Flacco, for example, phenomenal 1 year, right? So whoops the entire playoffs. Doesn't throw an interception, falls off, right? So we've seen quarterbacks come in and fall off. And I'm not trying to say this to be like to bash Brock. I'm not doing that. Cause I know people
Yeah,
will
yeah.
take my like a lot of people who watch shows will take what we say and spin it in a narrative. I think Brock and Kyle is special. But I like to be able to hold everything off. I got excited about Jimmy after 5 games, and then what happened, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I've learned from the past. I thought Jimmy was legit after 2017 for 5 games. I was super excited about him, and then he let me down. So right for me, as a fan who learned from the experience and the heartbreak, I'm kind of staying back and like I'm just coming for the ride. Like whatever you prove to us is what you prove to us. Whatever you become is what you become, and I'm excited about it.
I like that perspective. I agree. I think Kyle Shanahan recently was like on KMBR and he said that he feels like his playbook is completely open, including down the field passes that he can call anything for Brock Purdy. But they have also both spoken about how they are extremely collaborative and they definitely make sure to call plays that each one of them feel very comfortable with. And um, Purdy has spoken about like them kind of going over, okay, if they're down, what plays are kind of those money I'm going to give you no matter what plays. Hold on, let me plug in my app before it goes away. Oh, my bad. Um, but um, sorry, let me gather myself. Um,
You're
I
talking
do
about
think that
KMBR.
yes, Kyle Shanahan went on KMBR and did talk about how much more comfortable he's felt collaborating and communicating with Brock Purdy. Now, whether or not that's like specifically something Brock Purdy has been able to do, I kind of hypothesize that Kyle Shanahan maybe had a little bit of I don't know if resentment would be the right word, but Jimmy was kind of forced upon him. Kyle Shanahan, it's well documented, wanted Kirk Cousins. They ended up trading for Jimmy G. He did well enough for them to stick around, but it kind of seemed like some like it was like an unhappy marriage, but they both were like successful enough that they were like, okay, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But also, it's not completely, the entire time there was always rumors that they wanted to move on. So we knew that Kyle was not 100% sold. And I think that he might feel like a sense of re-inspiration um, having Brock Purdy and kind of knowing maybe that he needed something different to get over the hump with Jimmy. And maybe he feels like even though Purdy doesn't have the strongest arm or whatever, maybe he feels like whatever Purdy brings to the table does provide that difference that he was really craving from his relationship with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think a lot of that comes down to they both have that same mindset, and they both are chasing that one ultimate goal. Brock Purdy is so mature for his age, and Kyle Shanahan has talked a lot about their communication. And if you contrast that to the way that Kyle and all the team players have talked about Jimmy Garoppolo, him not answering the phone in the offseason, him maybe feeling a sense of complacency, like he was, probably felt like I'm a good football player. I just made $100 million, and this is probably who I'm going to be. Where Brock Purdy is still on a rookie deal. People still to this day, if this was if this was Trevor Lawrence, he'd be the unquestioned MVP frontrunner right now. But because it was a 7th round pick, because he's on a team with all these weapons, which Kyle Shanahan, and he doesn't have maybe the physical attributes as much. Brock Purdy still faces a lot of questions, which he should, but I think that maybe lights a fire within him. And so both Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy have this like sense of determination to kind of maybe prove their doubters wrong. And they've noticed like that in like coming together, someone said it really beautifully. They called it like a composer and an orchestrator. Like they need to work in tangent or in tangum. I'll learn words later. In titanium, they need to work together in order to put on the show. And that's kind of how I feel Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy have been, is them learning how to their belief in each other and their trust in each other that the other guy wants what they want as much as they do. Or maybe Kyle Shanahan probably second guessed that with Jimmy in the past, maybe thinking Jimmy isn't as dedicated as to this as I am. I think that they're both bringing out the best in each other, and they both have this maybe sense of, I mean, they haven't lost, so they might be having in kind of a honeymoon stage, but I think they both also trust that even if there were lulls, that the other person is equally as dedicated to kind of overcoming those challenges to each other and making the other person better. And I think that is kind of like cyclical, and seeing that maybe inspires the rest of the locker room, because they can, like, the locker room believes in Kyle Shanahan. So Kyle Shanahan believes in Brock Purdy, then everyone, like, it's cyclical. They all end up believing in each other and really getting behind each other. But yeah, I think when maybe contrasting Jimmy and Purdy, it might be a little less. Obviously, Jimmy had some erratic plays and turnover problems, but I actually think even if Brock Purdy were to go through a lull like that, that maybe the attitude wouldn't be the same from Kyle Shanahan. I think he's so much more open and excited, and seems more joyful, and he's done more in-game adjustments and all that stuff. And I think that all boils down to his like trust that Brock Purdy is as in it as he is. I think that makes sense. I think even in life, in normal relationships, I think when you feel supported, when you feel believed in, when you feel like the other person is giving as much effort as you are, that inspires you to work harder. If you go into work, or if you're in a friendship and you feel like your friendship is, or your friend is always, if they're sick, they're bringing you soup. If you're going through something, they're going to answer the call. They're going to be the one that helps you move. I think that kind of inspires you to be a better friend back. Like when someone treats you well, you also want to do that. And I feel like I've seen that within them, and that could potentially be what was an issue with Kyle and Jimmy. And then I think as the years went on, maybe it became more apparent and soured even more. And maybe just like the regular season wins couldn't really cover up the issues that they might have had. And I think now Kyle just seems like a new man, and Purdy just seems really happy to be there and pretty dedicated and extremely mature for his age.
And I think it goes back to, kind of, we're mentioning Jimmy Garoppolo and stuff like that, right? I think it goes back to Kyle Shanahan maturing from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance to Brock Purdy. With Jimmy Garoppolo, didn't really give him the confidence. When you hear, as a quarterback, when you hear that your head coach was depressed when he traded for you, that's kind of like a shot in the, like a slap in the face, right? And then with Trey Lance, you get drafted 3rd overall, and then the head coach doesn't really give you the confidence he should. And then to Brock Purdy, he's learned. Kyle Shanahan's learned. He's evolved. He's matured from those two quarterbacks to Brock Purdy. So when you look at it, it's maturity from Kyle as well. And I think he deserves the credit for maturing and understanding as a head coach. You gotta instill confidence in your players.
Yeah.
I like to compare the Niners situation right now to the championships of the Golden State Warriors. Okay. And I'm gonna
Okay.
break it down this way. If you're a basketball fan, you guys all know the Warriors have had a phenomenal team for the last 10 plus years, right? So
Mhm.
the Warriors had KD, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, right? Four superstars essentially. The way I see it is you have your Christian McCaffrey, who is essentially your Steph Curry. The gravity is everyone, all eyes are on him, right? Takes extra players with him. Now you have your KD, you can consider it Brandon Ayuk. Um, you have Chris and you got Roscoe's in the chat saying Warriors stink. Roscoe's your Lakers suck, bro. Your Lakers suck. Let's be real. Um, but you have your um, KD, essentially your Brandon Ayuk or Debo Samuel, however you want to consider it. Clay, the other one. To me, what I see Brock, and it's not a knock on Brock because Draymond's a Hall of Fame player. I think they make the right play, they make the right read, they do the right thing. They're a feisty ass teammate. They get in their teammate's face. Bright, like to be honest, that's kind of how I see him right now. I'm like, hey, you're kind of like that kind of person. You make the right reads, you do the right. You're not necessarily taking the credit. Do we see? Have you ever seen Brock take the credit? Like that's my offense. It's no, no.
Yeah.
It's we.
Yeah.
We are doing great, and I
Yeah.
think that's the best thing I've seen from. That's kind of how I've kind of explained it to a couple of people lately, and they're like, "Oh, okay, that makes a ton of sense." Not necessarily. Now, Draymond's a great player. Brock, he's a great player, but they're not that. They're gonna get criticized because who they play with. Oh, you play
Yeah.
with great. You get carried by XYZ, and I think that's the biggest issue right now is people are criticizing them for who they're playing with. Um, since we're on the Kyle Shanahan topic, is Kyle Shanahan the leader for Coach of the Year?
Ooh, I like that because normally I feel like normally that would go to a coach that's like it normally goes to if a team maybe had really low expectations and they really overperform. But right now, NFL teams doesn't the NFL like teams are like not looking good. I don't know if it's maybe the Niners look so dominant that like just in comparison, I'm like kind of side eyeing all these other teams. But I feel like yes, is long story short, I think he definitely should be. I know that I feel like him having so much like Purdy, maybe not getting the credit because of all the guys he plays with, even though people know that Kyle Shanahan is such a good coach. I think because he has a good team, he has a less like maybe less opportunity to win, or else cause same thing like Andy Reid doesn't win every year, even though he's probably the best coach in the NFL every year. It's just because he has Patrick Mahomes, so it usually goes to um, a team like last year it went to the Giants with Brian Daboll, just because their expectations were so low that them doing like mediocre to good was so surprising. But right now, when you look at the other teams, I don't see why he wouldn't. And especially I think if the national media also starts kind of having these conversations that you and I are and that a lot of 49er content creators and media people are about him changing, because it's not like in my opinion, it's not just that he's doing the same thing he's always done and maybe has a better quarterback. I think like you can kind of and it is that in the sense that like the down the field shots were always there, but I think his attitude and demeanor has changed so much that if they were to keep that up, especially if they did face some adversity um and I know that the playoffs don't really matter, but for me, if he were to make that hump and win the Super Bowl, like that change would be so impactful because he hasn't been able to make that hump. But yeah, I think he should. I think he should at least be in that conversation. I don't know. I don't know if he'll win it, just because I think all these awards are kind of confusing. I think maybe Christian McCaffrey should win MVP, but he's a running back, so we're talking about Brock Purdy more. I do think Kyle Shanahan, whether or not he would win Coach of the Year, is coaching like a Coach of the Year. He's scheming on, in my opinion, a new level, and I do think it goes back to that trust and connection he has with Brock, but also he's always been really well. And maybe Mike McDaniel could be in the conversation. I know they've done really well, but I think the 49ers have faced Do you think that this is true? Do you think the 49ers have faced better teams than the Dolphins? I think coming off that Denver Broncos, everyone was like super high on them, and I still think that they're going to be really good. But then they lost what by like 25 to um, the Bills, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, you beat up on Denver, but the freaking not Browns, the Justin Fields Bears. The Bears almost beat Denver, so it's not to me. That's not the what we should be grading. We shouldn't be grading teams on how well they do against Denver. Was my point.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins have played solid teams. I mean, it's you are what your record says you are. Every team in the NFL is good. Um,
Mhm.
I'm a believer of that. I think every team has good players. It's all about coaching at the end of the day. Which coaching staff is better, and that's what
Yeah.
eventually wins. And then how do you develop the talent? And I think right now, I think Kyle Shanahan is for sure coach of the year. Like it's no question for me. It's no questions about it.
Oh,
When you have
I like your
um,
decisiveness on this.
yeah, so when you have a quarterback who tears his UCL in the NFC Championship, you bring him back. The biggest question was, do the 49ers have a quarterback? That was the question coming into the season, right? Like
Yeah.
every big time media was like, "Oh, Sam Darnold is there." Well,
He's young. Come on.
you're passing up on Brock, right? Brock and Kyle's offense is scoring 30 points a week. 30, and then what you can't deny, Kyle is also coaching the defense in a way. This is
Yeah.
his style of defense. He put together this style of defense because he said this is the hardest defense I coach against. This is the kind of defense that shuts my offenses down. So I believe uh he's for sure coach of the year. I gotta address the comment, Ashley. NFL
No, I
doesn't hate
just
us because of cap. Don't bring that stuff
yeah.
in here. No, it's
Sorry.
not.
I'll block this. I
No, you're
just
good. You're good.
was
You don't
looking at
like.
that as well.
But to me, it's the NFL doesn't hate us because of cap. That's not true. But for me,
I also don't
I
think the NFL hates the 49ers at all. I think they've been loving this narrative.
I think
I don't
they
know.
absolutely. This is a why
Yeah.
wouldn't you not like the 49ers who have Mr. Irrelevant leading the way? You have what they're literally this is a Disney Channel movie
Yeah.
in the making. Like this is legit a Disney Channel movie in the making. And if someone needs me to produce it, I'll produce it. I'll sign the contract right now. We'll make millions of dollars to produce this movie. Um, but for sure, you can't see like I understand Coach of the Year goes to teams that were expecting to do bad, but realistically, I'm gonna ask you something, Ashley.
Yeah.
If you were on a team, do you ever expect to do bad?
No, that's true. Like every team
No.
comes in thinking that they're the
Super
most
Bowl,
prepared. But I also think that you're probably like aware, like I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong. When we were coming into the season, I was like, I feel like the Cardinals players all think that they're gonna lose. But then they came out and they're acting like they're like, what? You thought we were gonna do that? That's crazy. That's definitely
right?
not what we're gonna do.
It's a mentality. I think at the end of the day, you got to have that mentality. Is you're the best team in the league, and you got to play hard and stuff like that. So I think Kyle Shanahan 100% deserves Coach of the Year, and if he doesn't win it this year after um whatever record we end with and phenomenal. I don't think we end with a bad record. I think we'd probably be 15-2, 16-1 possibly. It's a very friendly schedule for the 49ers. How do you not win coach of the year after having that great of a year, leading the NFL in defense, top 2, top 3 defense in points per game? I believe they're number 1 right now in points per game. Your offense is up there with the league leading team. How are you not coach of the year? Like there's a
Yeah.
possibility of the Niners having coach of the year, MVP, and
Offensive
offensive
player of the year.
player of the year, and the defensive player of the year. That is
Yeah.
insane. It's absolutely ridiculous.
That's it. They gotta win the Super Bowl this year, man. Like they gotta they have a lot of juggernauts on they have a lot of amazing players. They have the best one of the best coaches. I know Andrew Reid exists, but in my opinion, with how dominant they are, they need to get this to the Super Bowl. And if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I feel like I need to. This is the year to win it. This is. I mean, they've never came out so. Even in 2019, the offense didn't look like this. You know what I mean? Under this regime, I feel like Kyle Shanahan has never coached a team that has looked so um, dominant before. I know that that's a maybe overused word, but it just is pretty incredible. So this is, in my opinion, this is the year to do it. This is the year to hopefully make that hump. But I'll end this I'll end this now. But I had such a great time talking with you. I do want wait, why I blocked the comment? Educate the dude. Um, I'll put this up just because I am newer to YouTube and everything, and I just want to like make it super clear that I'm um any sort of slander for anything that Kaepernick did, or anyone who does anything like that. I won't tolerate on this channel. I think that anyone who's maybe confused about what he did should look into the racial discrimination that goes on within police and police force and police brutality. And I think it was a super important cause. And especially in 2023, there's absolutely no use for anyone who um, wants to make comments against that. I don't think he did anything wrong. I know that at the beginning of this year, I think it was when Aaron Rodgers was hurt, Kaepernick wrote a letter to the Jets saying, asking to come on. He's made other statements saying that he would be willing to be a backup, and I think it's pretty embarrassing that the NFL has, in my opinion, kind of blackballed him from being able to have a chance. There's no reason even if he's not a starter, there's no reason he couldn't be a backup in the league right now. And I think the way the 49ers treated him and that the way a lot of fans treated him at that time was just extremely ignorant. And yeah, I definitely don't want anyone making any sort of comments like that in my comment section. And if I would have seen it earlier, I would have blocked it even then. So
Yeah, you're good.
yeah. But sorry for that like hard turn right there.
No, you're
But I
good.
had
You're good.
such a wonderful show. Oh wait, I can't hear you.
Ooh. I said, no, it's your show. You always gotta set your standards on your shows.
Yeah.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Perfect. I'm just a little bit new to YouTube, so I just want to I don't want anyone to be confused or feel uncomfortable here. And I want some people to feel uncomfortable, and then I want other people to understand where I stand. So, but no, I had such an excellent show today. I really enjoyed kind of diving deeper in that Purdy Shanahan connection, and I really liked you bringing up Coach of the Year. I feel like Richard Sherman earlier was bringing up Defensive Player of the Year. For the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about Offensive Player of the Year and MVP. And so I like that you're like, let's go for all of them. Let's talk about Coach of the Year now too. So if that happens, I'm gonna say you call it, because I feel like this is the first time that I've heard someone start mentioning that narrative. So we're gonna come back to this at the end of the year when it does happen. But I had such a wonderful time talking with you today. Everyone in the chat, if you aren't already, which I guarantee a lot of people that are in here from your channel, but if you aren't already, subscribe to Marco at Clutchstein Sports. I'm going to put his link to his channel in the description. Also his Twitter. He's always putting out excellent information. Especially during the off season, he usually has a lot of insider information that I've always found really insightful. When I was talking about people who have been really welcoming and helpful, and especially helping me learn a lot when it comes to players and formations and schemes and all that. Marco has always extended a hand and been extremely kind. So definitely follow him and feel free to reach out for anything. Not to speak for you, but yeah. Would
Thank
you
you. I
like to
appreciate
plug
that.
anything else?
No. If you're watching from my show, make sure you guys go to Ashley's channel, hit the subscribe button. She's been done a phenomenal job to start. She's doing phenomenal. Literally, what she's doing is grinding her tail off, and she's making waves on 49ers YouTube. So make sure you guys tune in. It's a great approach on how she talks it. I like how she ties in a lot of personal things from. It makes football understanding and fun to talk about, rather than talking just X's and O's. Like, it makes it a fun environment to come and just talk football and just in general. A great person. So make sure you guys go and subscribe to Ashley's channel, and then go to Twitter and hit that follow button as well on Twitter.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. Tomorrow I'm going to be on I normally don't know the time, but I do today. I feel so much more prepared. Tomorrow I'm going to be on with Jason Aponte on my show at 11. So please like and subscribe. and we'll see you guys then. But yeah, thank you so much, Marco. And I hope everyone else has a really excellent day. And yeah, don't forget to be open with your peers and everything about anything you got going on, or if it's just about talking football. Both of us are always open to that. I end these kind of awkwardly, so I'm going to stop talking now. Bye.